Mr. Darcy?
Miss Bennet. I
did not expect to see you, sir. We understood all the family were from home, or we should never have presumed.
I returned a day early. Excuse me, your parents are in good health?
Yes. They are very well. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad to hear it. How long have you been in this part of the country?
But 2 days, sir.
And where are you staying?
At the inn at Lambton?
Oh, yes, of course. Well, I'm just arrived myself. And your parents are in good health? And all your sisters?
Yes. They're all in excellent health.
Welcome to the VHS Club. We're so sorry if you're not a Pride and Prejudice fan, because this is going off the rails tonight, friends. This is going off the rails tonight. There's no rating system. There's just love. No. There's just so much love.
Rewatching this movie, it unlocked some core events in my life that I didn't realize that this is where they came from. And I was like, oh no, I'm not embarrassed by that at all. I'm actually not. My love for clawfoot tubs, because I'm obsessed. Ever since I was a kid, I was like, when I grow up, I want a clawfoot tub. I don't have one yet, but it's still goals. And then watching this movie and Darcy's taking his bath in the clawfoot tub, I'm like, oh, it's literally Colin Firth's fault. This is it. It's actually from this movie.
And we're a little punchy because we definitely underestimated. Like, I don't know if this was accurate for you, Nat, but in my mind, I was like, this is a 4 or 5 hour movie. Like, it's not a movie; it's a miniseries. But we're gonna. In my mind, I was like, it's 4 episodes, and then I started, and I was like, oh, it's 6. And I was like, well, I'm in. So it was definitely like 1:30 in the morning or so by the time I wrapped, and I had no regrets. I was like, nope.
Nat, Katie and I are actually texting this morning at like 1:30 a.m. being like, this is so good, double wedding. So yeah, I thought I could definitely watch 6 episodes in 2 days.
I thought 2 days I could do it. And I did 2.5, maybe 3 hours the first day, and then all the rest last night. And I didn't start until late. So it was definitely an adventure, but worth it. If you have not yet seen this one, which I love you all, Tater Tots, but I was kind of horrified. I was talking with one of my friends earlier today who, like, I feel it. She's like a lit friend, like a literature friend person. And she was like, oh, I've never seen Pride and Prejudice. And I was like,
well,
I'm sorry.
What? I was thinking,
what? No. What?
I was thinking about this because this played on the BBC. So in Canada, it played on PBS. Mm-hmm. So, which airs a lot of the BBC stuff, like the murder mystery weekends and that were hosted by Diana Rigg back in the day, which was the best. And so we always had a lot of access to this content, like these miniseries, when we were growing up here, because we are in the Commonwealth, like it aired live. It aired live when we were kids, so Katie had looked up, there was this crazy statistic, I think by the last episode aired, like half of the UK had tuned in to watch it.
Half
like
of the
live.
UK tuned in to watch the end of this miniseries live, which is just like, I don't know if this is I feel like is a lost art these days. Maybe it's not an art, absolutely, maybe that's the wrong word, but there used to be this concept of people who are younger than us. There used to be this concept out there of like, we are all watching the same thing at the same time because we don't have all that many options. And the UK, like, traditionally has always had less options. Even there's like not a lot of different channels there back pre-streaming days. So it was like all of the UK watching this like,
and the Commonwealth.
This almost verbatim to the book miniseries, 6-hour-long miniseries, and they were doing it 1 week at a time, right? So they were like waiting in bated breath for the next episode, which is kind of fantastic.
It was exciting. There was so much anticipation. There was so much build up, which actually is a huge part of this book as well. Like in the book, there's the meeting, they hate each other. So this is very much the enemies to lovers trope. Possibly where it's from, even.
Possibly started that trope? Yeah, exactly.
Possibly. I'm like, did Shakespeare do enemies to lovers?
Probably.
Maybe. Well,
Not
no,
as
Romeo and
well.
Juliet
I'm
always
gonna
loved each
say
other.
not
It
as
wasn't.
well,
Yeah, this might be that origin in English literature. So it had a huge chunk, like 8 months or something, in the book of their lives where they weren't together, and they kind of she started to hate him more and he started to fall in love with her more while they're apart. And then when they meet again, he's like, hey, you want to get married even though I shouldn't because you're terrible and your family's the worst. And she's like, that is the worst proposal. No. and he's like, what do you mean? But I love you. And she's like, I literally
but
hate
I
you
said
more
I
than when I
loved
first met
you,
you.
even though I hate your family. And she's like, wait, what?
And you're nothing much to talk about either. So there's this long period of time where they're not together, but you see how they keep thinking about each other and playing things over back of their minds. And so that anticipation builds up for their next meeting, which they're like the meeting where they finally meet again and we know they're for sure going to fall in love was what Katie showed at the beginning, the little clip we just saw. And I have to say that is one of my favorite clips probably in cinematic history, because
everyone's favorite clip that even if you so the crazy thing about this is, even if you, and I'm asking everyone who's hanging out with us in our live studio audience right now, have you seen this one? Because even if you haven't seen this version of Pride and Prejudice or know even nothing about the story, poor Colin Firth, lucky Colin Firth, has now become an icon for playing Mr. Darcy, which he has now played twice. He's played Mr. Darcy in this OG original forever in the canon version of Pride and Prejudice. And then he played it in a updated, modernized adaptation of Pride
sort of fan fiction way
in the Bridget Jones Diaries series. So
which she based, the Bridget Jones books were based on Colin Firth playing Mr. Darcy. Not even on the actual original content of Jane Austen's book.
But this is what's crazy about it. So here's a whole bunch of facts at you in a short period of time. So this version, this 6-part miniseries, which played on the BBC in the mid-90s, is like a as close as possible version to Jane Austen's original Pride and Prejudice book, right? So it's like an epic love story, as Nat said. And so the BBC, had like a very set way that they had traditionally done these kinds of miniseries. And this one was very, very different. This one was a lot faster paced. It had they were very intentional with actually being on set at a lot of these different locations. So traditionally they had done a lot of shows on sound stages and in kind of built sets. So this actually took them out into a lot of these iconic, huge mansions that still exist today. So you can go and tour Mr. Darcy's
house. You can go to Pemberley.
Go to Pemberley. It's on my list. It's on my checklist.
It's on the list.
It's on the list.
And Katie and I have agreed probably when we were 8 that we were going to go together, and we will.
We have to go together. But what's crazy about all of this is, and what I'm getting back kind of full circle to, is that so Colin Firth, who is here kind of in the middle of us in this epic 6-part box VHS set. Yes. But he actually initially didn't want to do this role because he didn't think he could pull it off and wasn't quite sure if it was a good fit for him. And the BBC also didn't really want to hire him. They were like, I don't know, maybe not. And he did this role so brilliantly, and it was so well written and directed and put together that now people who have no concept as to what Pride and Prejudice is, the book, the movies, any of it, pass a notion in the back of their head of something that they've heard, associate this book and everything that's been created since then with Colin Firth. He literally lives as Darcy. So here is this. I pulled this quote earlier today, which I shared on my Facebook, but he literally says, I'm fully aware that if I were to change professions tomorrow, become an astronaut, and be the first man to land on Mars, the headlines in the newspaper would read, Mr. Darcy lands on Mars. That's
so true.
that is how, and I can't think of another actor or another movie that like is as iconic for the one set actor. There's probably some that come close, but like he literally like in I don't know, in like a positive way of being typecast, he is now just typecast. Like even when he's in other things, he's like, oh, Mr. Darcy's in this new movie. Like he just is this character, which is kind of amazing for someone that didn't think he could pull it off, and the production company didn't want him for the role, which is just still nuts to me.
But the director is Simon Langton. So thank you so much, Simon Langton, for all of this. So one thing that Simon Langton did also with this that was off source material, that was off script for the book, was the infamous wet Mr. Darcy. He's going to Pemberley just for a quick layover because he has a couple of things to tie up in the north. So he leaves London. He rides up, and on his property, his estate, he's a day early. He decides, he sees his beautiful estate, which has a private lake on it. And he's like, you know what? I'm really sweaty after like horseback riding for like a couple of hours. I looked it up. I think it was something like up to like 5 hours, 3 to 5 hours, something like that. Horseback riding. He decides to jump into the lake. So he gets off the horse, he dives into the water, he comes out, and in the scene that we just saw, he's soaking wet, his shirt is untucked, his tie is undone, and much to everybody who has read the book and seeing this for the first time, we're very surprised, as Liza Bennet was surprised. And the way that Jennifer Ehle says, she's like, oh, we're very good, but her mouth says the word wet. And she recovers and she's like, good. She mouths the word wet, but then catches her breath and then says the word good out loud. Iconic.
Yeah.
Best, one of the best scenes. Definitely one of the most enjoyable scenes.
And kind of amazing again, because supposedly the director of this film was like, let's just have him jump in naked and get out naked. And the BBC was
it's more realistic. Like, he's home alone on his estate. No, he lives by himself. He knows his sister is off elsewhere. Like, nobody's home.
Yeah.
Like
the BBC is just like, no, all of the UK
they don't do nudity.
Watching. We're not going to do nudity. This is rated G. But I actually think in some ways it's somewhat more scandalous. Go with me here, and I know you're on the same page as me. It is more scandalous for him to be in like a skin tight, wet white
clingy
white shirt than it is for him to be fully naked in this scene. I feel like it's just much better. So it worked out. Thank you, BBC. We appreciate you. But yeah, that scene is not, sadly not in the book. So if you're looking for like a spicy read, Pride and Prejudice is not your spicy read. But this version. No. This version definitely has that added spiciness to it. So, and
what's funny is that every version after this movie was made, after this miniseries was made, includes the wet Mr. Darcy. Yeah, even if they're talking about it on a sitcom, they're like, oh, we're having a Pride and Prejudice party. And it's like, oh, we've ordered a Mr. Darcy, and oh, we can wet him when he gets here. You know, like it's a joke and everything. And movies who genuinely try to recreate Pride and Prejudice always have this scene in it.
Yeah.
I fear that a lot of people who don't read older, like classic fiction, have no idea that this scene doesn't actually exist.
Oh, that's so true. Well, we should go through. I have not yet seen folks answer whether or not they've seen this. I know Dane has because he's in the chat here. So other than Dane, who's likely been forced to watch this by both his sister and myself, yes. He's let us know if you have seen this version or if you know the Pride and Prejudice story. But I think we should talk a little bit. I don't think we have to get too much into the weeds of the story itself because I think you kind of covered generally the basics. But I want to talk.
Like if we don't know Pride and Prejudice, guys, come on.
Yeah, it's not the episode for you. But I want to talk a little bit about the array of amazing characters in this story.
Yes.
Because I do think, like, love or hate them, every single character like holds their own in this story, and certainly in this adaptation. Like, it's pretty remarkable. Yes. I go back and forth between, I mean, obviously, like, so Eliza and Darcy are definitely like my top two favorite. They are the leads. They are the love story. Everything about them. But I would think if I had to pick like not one of those two as a favorite character, for me it would probably either be Mr. Bennet, Eliza's dad, who's just like,
hands down. I was like, Mr. Bennet
fantastic.
has the best lines in this movie
Yeah,
slash
he
book.
might
Like,
he might actually have better lines than most of the other
Yeah,
ones,
he does.
sure. Yeah, it's him, or it could be Mrs. Bennet. And go with me, she's the most obnoxious possible character, but she does it so well that you can't help but have like some level of respect
And
for
it's
the writing.
funny,
You're
it's
like,
this actress, like, because she's played differently, and each actor tries to make it their own, unless you're from the 2005 version of the movie where they really just tried their best to chameleon Jennifer and Colin, which is disappointing because both of those actors are good actors in their own rights. But they really just tried to copy these two actors, which is why it will never be considered a good version of Pride and Prejudice. But also, like, what can you do in an hour and 20 minutes? You know, like, it's a 6-hour movie. So Mrs. Bennet is often played, like, she's presented as very flighty and idiotic and hysterical. Not hysterical as in funny, but as in she has hysterics and vapors, and you got to put it in historical context. She's actually also conniving and clever and posturing, you know, so she's quite a complex character, and the actress in this movie really makes her over the top. Like, if she screeches almost every single line. She's either laughing too loud or crying hysterically, asking for her breathing salts, you know, like her fainting salts. She's so ridiculous. She's so over the top that as much as you equally want to punch her in the face, you also find her super hilarious.
Yeah. Oh, Bingley. Bingley is my third. Of the
he's such
kind
a
of
squish.
Backup characters. It's Mr. Bennet, Bingley, and then Mrs. Bennet. Bingley is the adorable, like, best friend of Darcy who moves in next door to the Bennet family, which is the 5 daughters of who this story centers around. So, and he's just so, like, keen and lovable and kind, and like he just plays a really wonderful, he plays a really wonderful foil to almost every other character in this, who are like at least somewhat self-serving, or like are trying to figure out what's going on, or who are playing some kind of game. He's just like not. He's so pure and wonderful. He's just like nice. He's just a nice.
It seems like he has no ability. No. He has like no ability to be anything other than himself. He's like, if he likes you, he's gonna like you. He doesn't think badly of anybody unless they really prove it. And then he's like, but everybody has a little bit of good in them. And you know, he listens to people he respects, but also does his own thing.
And another fun fact, though, so most of the facts and kind of trivia about this particular miniseries center around like the landscape, the like popularity of it, and then the actors. So the actress that plays Miss Bingley, so it's Bingley's sister, who's like very vapid and terrible and awful.
Yes.
You hate her so much that you feel bad about it. Like, I was just like, oh, I don't really like want to hate the actress, but I'm like, it's like coming through.
I love the actress.
Yeah.
She can cut somebody with like a downward glance. Yeah. Like, she slights somebody looking down her nose at them. Like, it's so iconic.
But she is apparently a direct descendant of the Austen. So she is a direct descendant of Jane Austen's brother, I believe, Edward. So yeah, which has got to be like really cool. And then the other slightly less cool, but still cool to me. So Bingley himself is directly related to, as a cousin of Helen.
He's
Bonham
a very
Carter.
distant cousin of Helen Bonham Carter. Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of awesome because he's like,
I think
so
distant enough that they could marry, but
I know, but like kind of
but still they're related.
She's like, I mean, so wonderfully.
She was also an ingenue in a lot of these type of movies.
But
back,
she's very.
back in the 80s.
I mean, I guess this is more of like a modern view looking kind of back at her career, but she is like nowadays definitely renowned for being like very like choosing very dark, crazy, kooky, like over the top roles, and he's like so like pure in this movie that you're like, really? Okay. Like,
How were they related?
I kind of would love to see you guys like at a family reunion together, because it would be fantastic to just sit and watch like how this all plays out. But yeah, so definitely fun on that front that that you have these kind of two sort of like weird family history things. The other fact that I do love, although it breaks my heart that they're no longer together, but Colin Firth and Jennifer Ehle, who are the two leads in this, were actually dating, I think, almost from the very beginning of this movie onward for a few years. So the chemistry in this movie is fantastic, largely in part because it was actual chemistry,
real,
just
very real.
And they did actually do the like final like so Darcy proposes twice in this book / movie. And and the final proposal, like the beautiful it works out proposal scene at the end, was the first thing that they filmed. So you know how they always like film sex scenes,
the kiss, yeah.
So they filmed the proposal kiss scene first, which has got to be like awesome if they were dating, because it was just like from that point on, then it's just like
they're like, oh yeah, like, we know.
You have that all in mind. You know where it's going to. Like so it would have been a fun thing to start with.
Yeah, so some of the characters as well. Wickham. So while I was rewatching this, Katie can contest that I definitely had was messaging her some violent feels about Wickham. So Wickham,
you're supposed to have violent feels about Wickham. He's a garbage person. Great
garbage
person.
Great acting, yes, because we hate him very much. So he is the son of Mr. Darcy Sr.'s steward. So basically his how would a steward translate in this day and age?
I don't know. Groundskeeper?
Personal assistant?
Personal assistant? I think he does like everything, right?
Yeah, like he does his accounting, he manages the estate, for on behalf of
more
his...
than a groundskeeper. Sorry, I was trying to think of like a house, like not a butler, but like bigger than a butler. Yeah.
But groundskeeper takes us into Lady Chatterley's lover territory, which that one is erotic. I mean, spicy. So we say spicy. But so he's the son of, and the Mr. Darcy Sr. used to treat him as family, and he was never like, sent to the servants' quarters or kept, below stairs, like downstairs. He was always very much upstairs, which is very unprecedented for the time. So he was always considered family. When Mr. Darcy Sr. passes, he was supposed to inherit a parsonage. So he was supposed to become a minister in the Anglican Church, and he was supposed to inherit a church on the estate and be the minister for the estate, which is a very prestigious job. So usually the history of the I guess early Victorian period or Regency era, the eldest son would inherit the estate and money. The second son would inherit the parsonage. The third son and anybody after can then get a job, a trade, such as being an advocate, a lawyer, or an accountant and stuff like that, which was considered rather low class. So it's like if you were the third son, you basically were poor. So
you were going to marry rich. That was the goal.
Yeah, you had to marry rich. Like you were hoping your eldest brother would find you good matches. Or die. Yes. So Wickham was really being set up as one of into a gentleman's society, into the high society of England. And he decided, as we find out, that he's like, I don't want to be a priest, which if you're a parson, like if you're in a parsonage, you can get married. They're Anglican, they're not Catholic. So like he was able to get married and like have a good solid living, a steady income, and he's like, no, I'm not doing that. He's like, I want to gamble and whore around, just give me a wad of cash, like give me a lump sum instead. So Darcy's like, okay, here's your lump sum. He blows it all away. He then gets bailed out because he essentially kidnaps Darcy's 15-year-old sister and is about to run away with her to get married so he can get her inheritance, because she has something like an obscene amount of money coming to her, like £30,000, which is an incredible inheritance because, for instance, the Bennets...
I think they said it was like 1.8 million today or something like that. It was like less than I thought, but still a lot of money.
But at the time it was a lot, because like the Bennets, who are considered poor country squires, so her father was a gentleman but didn't marry wealth, like he didn't get a huge dowry from his wife, so they were considered poor, which is crazy to me. And like the Mrs. Bennet's brother was a lawyer, and they're like, oh my god, he's so poor, he's an attorney. And I was like, but they're pretty rich, and they had a, like, yes, they lived in the bad side of town, but they had a really big house and servants.
Well, so I looked up.
They're not poor by us standards.
I looked up their salary. So the salary breakdown. It was in one of the articles that I was reading. So yeah, so like Darcy, basically, his family
has all the money.
Would have been the same as, I think it was like 1.8 million a year. But the Bennett's family was still, I think they said it was like something like would translate to about $300,000 a year, which is like
like
still
each
way
daughter
more than like the average like North American family is bringing home. So I was like, all right, so they weren't like poor, but I guess if they were trying to, so they were like upper middle class, but they were nowhere near what like and I forgot Bingley's, but Bingley's was like equivalent, like was the equivalent of like 800,000 or something. So it was like, you know, they were definitely lower than the other.
I think each Bennet daughter was gonna get $1,000 a year dowry for their husband, which was considered not a lot when you look at like Darcy's sister was gonna get something like 30,000 a year, you know, like, so there was a discrepancy. So Wickham tries to steal Darcy's like actual child sister, she's 15, okay, she's still a kid, to marry her, but Darcy comes across the plot and stops it before she gets ruined, because even if society had heard that she went away with him, even with a chaperone, she would have been ruined, and the whole family could have lost all of their business, they could have lost their estate, they could have lost all societal connections, and she would have never been married. Like, it was actually terrible. So he pays Wickham off to basically piss off and die somewhere alone. You know? And then now we flash forward to sort of today, and his best friend Bingley buys this estate in Hertfordshire next to the Bennets, and they go to a ball, they meet all the Bennet daughters, and of course the mother is very excited to set up any of the daughters with Bingley or Darcy. They all soon realize Darcy is very grumpy. And arrogant, prideful, a lot of scowling, and it ends up that Wingham, who has joined the military, is part of a regiment that is staying in this town. He ends up at one point, which sort of came left field, because he's flirting with Elizabeth, in part because she's beautiful and smart, and in part because it definitely pisses Darcy off. Like, that's obvious to everybody in the room except for Darcy and Elizabeth. And he runs away with her kid sister, who's 15. He actually kidnaps her. Takes her virtue, we'll say. I was like, how do I say rape? Sorry. Beep. He takes her virtue without marrying her. He has no intention of marrying her. He's trying to figure out how to ditch her when Darcy comes across the plot, again saves the girl by actually forcing him to marry Lydia. Because at this point, like, they've already had marital relations. So the only way to save the Bennet family is to force Wickham to marry her. So he does all this, but he doesn't want Elizabeth to know. And anyway, so I was upset, to get back to to get all the way back to that. I was upset that Wickham is this like near 30-year-old man. He's 27 or 28, and he consistently goes after 15-year-old girls. And Katie's like, well, it was a different time and people married young. So I looked it up. And according to history.com, the average age of a woman marrying for her first marriage in this exact time period, in this exact area, was 22 to 26 years old. It's like even 22 is considered very young at the time, and people never strayed. Like, people in society would never have strayed younger than 22 because it was unacceptable. They were children still. Gasp.
Yeah.
Wickham was an evil man. So I'm like rewatching it. I'm like, Jesus, like he literally, this is actually kidnapping. They don't present it as kidnapping. They're like, oh, the girl was flighty and such a flirt and didn't know what she was getting into. I'm like, because she was a baby. And he manipulated her.
It's kind of one of the storylines too that, like, I mean, I guess the one, like, not negative that I'll say about this book and movie, it's like, it feels like a little bit weird / like it's certainly obviously convenient for the story, but it's like Wickham has spent, if you're like knee deep into it as we were last night, like Wickham has spent all this time with his family, with the Beckett family, right? So Bennet family.
Bennett.
I'm up way too late last night, you guys. So he's been spending all this time with these families. He and like all the whole regiment are stationed in the like right nearby where their house is. Yeah. They're in their town, and so like he knows this entire family. He knows that they have absolutely no money. He's already tried to woo and seduce and win over and sleep with and whatever Elizabeth, which I kind of get that one because he like seems to just like her. So it's like, maybe he's being slimy because he just wants to sleep with her. Maybe it's because he wants to get back at Darcy and that would make Darcy angry. But like that relationship makes sense to me. But for him to like, he and the regiment are gone. There are other women there so like, I guess I just don't get his end game for it. It's not money. It doesn't really like, I don't totally understand that. I don't totally believe that it's just sex because she's young and she's obnoxious. Like he does not like her.
He seems to have a penchant for underage girls.
But then there's also like there's got to be other girls that are around there that like are not associated with a family that he knows. Like it's gonna come back.
There was also a storyline which has me raging in this movie. I don't know if she was a redhead in the book, but there's a young lady who comes to town, and she's new in town. She's there with her guardian, her uncle. She's an heiress, so she has a big dowry because she's inherited a fortune. She has no other family other than her uncle, and all the girls at the ball are sort of gossiping about her, being like, oh, look at her, she's so ugly. She was actually quite beautiful, and especially for our non-British audience or non-UK audience, the reason she was ugly is because she was a redhead. Yeah, like literally she had freckles and she had a redhead. My own hair and family is extremely offended. Yeah. The word, and I know it's not considered a bad word here, ginger it's a very derogatory word. In the UK. I grew up being like, if anybody calls you that, you have every right to punch him in the face. It was like people have been fired in the British military for using the term ginger because it's only used in a derogatory way. Anyway, so this girl was considered ugly because she had red hair and freckles. Ooh. But they're like, she has the best virtue of all, no matter how ugly she is, she's rich. Yes. So Wickham, it's then heard that Wickham is engaged to her. Yeah. Which makes sense. And he apologizes to Elizabeth because he's going after money. And she's like, everybody
And that's like
you know,
fine. Like that's fine.
everybody
Like,
realistically is after money, but she is also quite young, they mention. And they do also mention in the book and in the movie that, you know, when her uncle basically found out of the engagement, he takes her away like real fast. It's like the engagement is broken and she is out of town. Like she's never coming back to where Wickham is. So like there seems to be a problem with him and a societally acceptable age limit.
yeah. I totally agree with you on that. I
But
guess
it's really dark.
I just
it's
don't
like
get
Bronte
like, why...
dark.
Yeah, it is Bronte dark. I guess I just don't get why Kitty. Like, I mean, I know from a like, Lydia. Sorry, I know from a storyline standpoint why, but it's like, but yeah, and I feel like in the actual thing, like he's handsome enough. And
he's
like,
supposed to be very charming and very
charming
good
enough
looking.
that he like literally could have A, found another woman with money, or B,
Anybody.
found another young woman to just bed. Like if that was what, like he has no motivation to be with her. Like, and only,
well, I think it's just because she was there.
Issues, I guess. Like
she was there and she was manipulable. I think she was just very manipulable. Like he knew she was a big flirt and she enjoyed the attention. I think it's a very dark topic, and I think only Austen could have answered that, but nobody would have even thought about. And it's funny because a lot of the other characters, especially the adults, like the married couples in the story, are like, oh, there's no way. He's basically a gentleman. He's in the regiment. He wears a red coat. He's so smart, and is like, there's no way he would behave in such, like the gentry had absolutely no societal discussion on things like that. It was considered very poor form. Nobody would ever even believe that a gentleman could do something that evil. Like they only thought criminals could do something like that. And they say it a few times, you know, and also I find the depth in how every single character blames themselves for Wickham's behavior. Like we go through the battery. It's like Mrs. Wickham blames her. I'm like, I actually kind of blame her a little too, but really it's Wickham because he manipulated and kidnapped this child. Anyways, so you could blame Lydia because she is quite actually one of the most obnoxious characters
she's kind of
ever
for fate, as mean
written.
As that is.
Like,
as victim
but also,
as that is.
I know, and I was thinking that because I'm like, oh my god, she's so obnoxious. But then also she has her prefrontal cortex is only going to develop in like 12 years from that point on. You know, like her prefrontal cortex will develop between 26 and 28 years old for a girl. So it's like she's not an adult yet. You know, so it's hard not to blame her because she's so terrible, but also she's a kid. I don't know, I just feel like Austen had in her biography, we know she's seen a quite a darker side of society, even though she was kind of very much like the Bennets. They were gentry adjacent because of a bad match in older family members. So like she died single, alone, at one point almost in complete poverty, but her books kind of saved her, and she had a good career for a woman, which was unheard of. But I feel like because she also had a lot of sisters, there must have been something she had witnessed in her life for her to have this dark, because this theme also comes up in other books, like similar concepts. So it's like, she probably witnessed something in her lifetime to have such a hate it. But
yeah, I know. And the book and the movie do such a good job of like, I don't know, not like making it seem less upsetting than it is. So
it's more palatable.
It's more palatable. So it is interesting. Like when you really think about it, you're like, oh yeah, that. Really
well, we know she's going to be saved, right? Like, I mean, it's Jane Austen. There's a happy ending, you know, like everybody like has a love match, you know, and that's one thing that is very unique to this time, is a love match. Like it was very unheard of. And actually it was kind of fashioned off of Queen Victoria, because Queen Victoria had a love, like the actual Queen of England, married for love. And as I pointed out to Katie earlier, I'm like, well, she married for love of like the suitors that were proposed to her. She picked the one that she liked the best.
She picked the one that she loved.
But it was famously a love match. And she's the reason people wear white wedding dresses. It was a trend that she started. And engagement rings was a trend that she started. And she's pretty badass. Vicious, but badass. So, I mean, she was a woman in charge of a nation, right? So, yeah, so she had to be badass. But so a lot of, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's interesting. So like love matches were actually also a trend started by Queen Victoria. So it was very uncommon at the time that Austen wrote this. So it was interesting to see that it's always like one of her, like her big ending is the love match. So
yeah,
which we live for.
And it makes characters like Darcy, I think, more interesting too, because it's like he's really struggling with the fact that he wants to do the right thing and he wants to be like this strong, responsible leader of his household, but in order to do that, he really shouldn't marry someone that he's in love with, especially someone that's so beneath him. So then like his original engagement proposal attempt, like where he basically
is the best he could do.
It was the best he could do, and it's really like, it's really genuine. Like he's like, I love you even though I'm really not supposed to, and I'm like fighting with myself over this, and I like, and even like as after he gets rejected by her, he's like really struggling with it, because again, it like you said, it goes completely against like societal norms. He should be marrying someone that like that kind of
get him shunned. Like we don't know how it actually ends.
Yeah,
like
it wouldn't have ended like well from a like they would have been somewhat, maybe not ostracized because of the amount of money that
I think he had enough money that he could have bought people's like just host a couple of lavish balls and people would shut up about it. But they would gossip for a bit though.
Yeah, but she would have been like talked about in the way that like
fish out of
like
water.
Like the couple that gets together after both parties, cheat on their first spouses, where you're just like, oh, we're not.
It's like we're happy that you're in love, but you guys are adulterers.
Yeah. Like right, like there's like it's like that level of kind of like you're like, oh, this isn't how it's supposed. Okay, good. So it's I think it in that context and with that kind of like historical understanding, it makes his character, I think, even a little bit
pretty
more likable and more accurate.
Yeah.
The one thing that this movie did that I thought was really interesting, and I didn't even really realize how well they did it until I started researching for this episode. So I, both Nat and I are English lit majors, so we've read this book a ton, probably before we had even seen this version.
We read it when we were like
maybe around the same time, but
10, 12 years old.
I know that,
we've read it
right? So like, I know the book as well as I know the miniseries, but I will say that, as you said at the very beginning of this episode, like the book is told almost entirely in Elizabeth's point of view. So you actually have very little understanding of Darcy other than through like her vantage
lens.
point, right? Her lens, like
or what other people are telling her.
Or what other people are telling her, right? So like a lot of her understanding of him initially is a misunderstanding of him based on like what she sees and then
her
what
prejudice,
she infers, and her prejudice. So it was interesting because one of the things in researching this that came up about the the miniseries movie version of this is that as they were trying to think it through, it was really important for them to have Darcy have like a kind of an equal amount of screen time, like much more than what would be in the book. And they really tried to use that time rather than like writing additional dialogue for him, because they didn't want to veer off from the book. They have him like showing his frustration in all of these different like settings, right? So like you were saying, like you love the clawfoot tub, like that scene is like, it's like angry bath, like like trying to like think through, and then he's like later he's like fencing,
but he sees her playing with the dog from the window of his bathroom, and he's just like like you could see the chink in his armor, you know. He so brilliantly, as the movie progresses, so at the beginning of the movie he's scowling, just hard, a lot of jaw work, you know, from the actor, just a lot of scowling, right? And then you could see when he meets her and he starts to, oh, she likes books. Oh, she doesn't take shit from other people. He starts to see these things that he can't help but like. So he does this sort of like crooked turn up in his mouth that's almost a smirk. Not a smirk, almost a smirk. Because he can't help but enjoy her. And then we see as the movie progresses, we get a smirk. And then we see like also the way that Colin Firth stares at her from across the room, like, or when he walks into a room and his eyes just immediately, like, he's coming around the corner of the door and his eyes immediately laser onto her. Like, he is locked. He knows where she is in the room before he walks into it. And then when they finally do realize that they are in love, we get a half smile and then a full smile when they get married. Yeah. And I just thought that was so brilliant how they drew that out, like how it progressed, it evolved through the whole movie. His face work.
You also, like, in addition to that, you get to spend more time with him. So like you see him, like I think one of my favorites, other than like the kind of iconic romance building conversations between the two leads. One of my favorite moments in the movie is where it's later in the film, he is like knows that he's in love with her. He's I think it's like almost like kind of right as he's starting to plan out to save Lydia. It's like in and around that ending point. Mm-hmm. And he's at Pemberley, and he's got Bingley and Bingley's sisters there. And Bingley's sister, in like epic moments, is just putting as many digs as she can at Elizabeth, because she's just trying to like get back into a gossipy phase with him, to like be back on his side again, and like
possibly try to marry him herself, which I'm like,
no, 100%. But it's like, it's very
Miss Bingley, like, you're never, like, you've known him your whole life, you're never getting in there, like, never. He didn't even friend zone you, you're just not on his radar.
You're not even a friend. But there's this moment where she makes some snide remark, and he literally just says no, and just gets up and walks out. And I'm like, it's just awesome, because like, again, like, that's not, that interchange is obviously not in the book at all, but like,
he's so upset too.
Build of feeling. Yeah, it's the building of
what I
feelings.
Loved about that,
awesome.
He's so upset, he screams no in her face, storms out, and then it sort of flashes forward. It's the middle of the night and he's still that angry. Like, he has not been able to let go of Miss Bingley slighting his Lizzie. You know, like, he can't even go to bed. He's like up with the dog in like the library, the parlor with no fire. He's just like looking out the moonlit window over the lake. Yeah, he has a candle.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, that was pretty priceless. I have to say, so when you're like, the most epic scenes, I'm like, the bathtub, the fencing, the pond, I'm like, it's just Darcy wet, right?
In the movies that are not in the book, but you feel them in the book, even though they're not in the book. Yeah. It's those scenes, and then I will say, as like kind of my favorite last scene, and are the two major interchanges between Lizzie and her dad. So there's like one at the very beginning that's fantastic, and then my favorite between the two of them at the very end, where Darcy has already asked for her hand in marriage to her father, and her father then brings her in and talks to her, and he knows
he doesn't believe it.
He doesn't believe it, and he's already like, not that much before this moment, has already like made fun of Darcy with like Elizabeth, because the two of them have that kind of relationship.
She's like, why aren't you laughing at my joke? Like, that was a good joke. It's like, yes, Dad, it's real funny.
Yeah. It's like,
secretly I'm in love with him.
Exactly. And he's just, what's great about it is like, he's such a wonderful father that like he knows that, and she's his favorite, but he knows that she has had this relationship with Darcy all the way through, where she hasn't been impressed with him, and she's found him really cold and really, really frustrating, and she's obviously talked with her father about this, where he's also noticed it all the way through. So he basically says like, you don't have to marry this guy. Like, this guy asked for your hand, great.
I said, like, yes, but you can you're making your own decision.
Make your own decision. And you know, she obviously like she says all the reasons why she's in love with him, and then her dad is like thrilled and happy all the way through. But he like, I hope that Jane Austen's dad was like that, or like that she knew someone in her life that like that gave her that kind of feeling, because I feel
respect.
I feel like that relationship is like the kind of, again, with sort of like
to have
the
a man
of a father-daughter relationship, like the thing that we think of when we think of like daddy-daughter relationships, like that. That's what I think of as kind of like that iconic moment where they're playful and fun, but they like, you know, he's like he has no money left and has like been through a lot over that period of time. I guess Darcy saved him, so he's got some money, but it's like, you know, he's had a bad run of it, and at the very end of it is still just like like it would also be a pretty big risk, I guess, because Darcy has paid everything off at that point. For him to say like, no, my daughter's not going to marry you, would have been a pretty big risk, because he would have lost, you know, potentially.
It would have been quite a slight.
Yeah.
I have to say, Jane Austen's interpretation of Mr. Bennet is I wouldn't even say in today's standards that's what we expect from men. I mean, it's what women expect, but it's not what exists. Like, to have a man, a rich white man, not as rich as Darcy, but treat women with dignity, with respect, as an equal, give her especially in this time period, to give her the empowerment to make her own decisions. He's like, oh yeah, I know the societal rule, he had to ask me, he did everything right, like, I left the door open for you, but it's totally your decision. Like, I'm not involved in your choice, you know. Like, for a man at that time especially to say that is pretty wild. I'm like, I think we're a little bit done with the patriarchy nowadays, but it's also a pretty like new concept in the past couple years, like two. So, but also we didn't talk about Mr. Collins, which is, so at the time, women could not inherit. So if the dad died, his daughters and his wife were homeless, because it would go to the next available heir. Which is like a distant cousin, Mr. Collins, and he's
awful.
Awful.
Wonderfully awful.
Oh my God, he's so funny. He's such a buffoon. He's so self-important. He has no concept that other people are in the world around him except to listen to him brag. You know, like, he's a braggart. You know, the actor who plays him is so wildly funny. And I think the most hysterical scene in this whole adaptation is when Lizzie has to dance with him. They call it, so her name's Elizabeth. They call her Lizzie, like her family calls her Lizzie. Darcy calls her Lizzie, of course. And they also call her Liza. Like, more like her sister calls her Liza, or her dad. You know, so her favorite sister Jane, not the idiot ones. So Mr. Collins bows, like, they start the dance, and he does this little like leg kick thingy. And because he's dressed in his like parsonage outfit, so he's not as, you know, gentlemanly. Like, he doesn't have the high boots. He has little shoes and high socks with bows. Okay? Like, and short pants, like his pantaloons. Oh my God. When he does the little leg kick thingy, I laugh so hard. I love it. He comes, he wants a wife, because he's like, you know, when Mr. Bennet, when you die, don't worry, your wife and daughters won't be destitute, because I'll marry one of them. And he's like, they're the most beautiful women in the countryside. They're famous for their beauty. I'll just pick, I'm going to pick Jane, because she's literally the most beautiful woman in society. And they're like, she's going to marry Bingley. It's a love match. No. So he's like, oh, okay. So Lizzie, I'll marry her. And poor Lizzie's like, no. And then when he does finally propose, and she absolutely flat out refuses him, her mom's freaking out. She's like, you have to marry him, otherwise we're all going to die destitute, which is quite actually true. But her dad, and this is one of my favorite lines, he's like, you know, you're stuck in a conundrum right now. If you don't marry this man, your mother will never speak to you again. But if you do marry him, I will never speak to you again. And I'm like, yes, Dad! Like, come in for the save. Because she probably would have married him. Yeah. And then it brings up her best friend Charlotte. Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how actually, like, she's very practical. Like, the whole plot, she is talking about, oh, this person has this much money, this person has that much money. This would be an easy match for us to make, like, it would be a good match because it's financially acceptable for both parties. And the second Collins gets turned down by Lizzie, she's like, I'll marry you. Like, and she's like, I'll marry you, inherit all of your father's money and your home, and doesn't give any assurances like, hey, don't worry, when your dad dies, which he's probably like 50, by the way, when your dad dies, which seems to be soon, like, she doesn't give any assurance, like,
No, she doesn't.
don't worry, I'll talk my husband into taking care of you guys.
Yeah.
No, it's just like, mine's now. Like, what? Oh, I had a choice C word to use instead of Charlotte.
She's not a likable person, that's for sure.
She gets more unlikable as it goes on. At first, I'm like, practical bitch. Gotta love a practical bitch. I'm like, nope, just a bitch. Like, vicious. Vicious.
I love Paul says, I'm remembering seeing this. But this is bringing it all back for Paul.
Oh, Colin Firth.
All right, I gotta swing over here because we're almost at the end of our hour. We've got to see. So, okay, we have our Mr. Darcy, but we have a couple other.
See, that's the almost smirk that I'm talking about, where he couldn't help himself. In this scene, he knows he's in love with her because he adjusts his collar and then he touches his face, and then, anyways, that's that scene where he smirks.
And then this one, I wish we'd meet again very soon. This is great. If you're listening, you need to come over to the video just for this part so that you can see how amazing Colin Firth is at this. Let me see. And then this one, the intensity. I hope that your family is in good health, which I think he asks like 5 times during this movie. Is your family in good health? I hope that your family is in good health. It's just, he's just so fantastic.
That's the scene where he proposes to her, where he says, I ardently love you, which ardently means like passionately, but I'm like,
but also like,
Mr. Darcy, I feel like that's a little forward for your first proposal.
Well, what's great about that proposal, and then we'll wrap with our potato ratings, but what's great about this proposal is that he's so frustrated by the fact that like he's in this position. Like he's like passionately in love with her, and also darn it, because he's not supposed to be, and he likes to follow the rules, and her family is awful, and also he really loves her, but this stuff over here is just awful, and like the frustration level. And I
love the look on his face when she rejects him, and he's like, and he tries to argue the point. And then she's like, look, you broke up my sister's like soon to be engagement. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, aren't you sorry about that? He's like, fuck no. And she's like, this is part of the proposal? Like, you ruined my sister's life? And he's like, yeah, your family's the worst.
Yeah. Which she can't really argue. Her family is the worst.
Well,
short of her dad and Jane.
The dad is like, the 3 younger sisters and the mother, he calls them idiots and stupid constantly. When Lydia runs off with Wickham, he grounds Kitty for the next 10 years or until she can string together a rational thought. Which he knows is not going to be ever. Like, that's so good. A single rational thought, you won't be grounded anymore.
Just glorious.
Oh, Dad.
Well, we've come to the end. If this is the first time you're watching this episode, we rate in potatoes, not in stars, but you can rate in stars if you want to. We rate in Christian taters. This one is an exception because we just really did this one for the fun of it. Not even really a movie, but you know what? It does take place.
It is the only version
in the 90s, so I'm gonna.
It is the only true version of Pride and Prejudice.
It is the only true version. And for those of you who can't see, I'm already in my Home Alone Merry Christmas You Filthy Animal sweatshirt, so I am ready to kick into Christmas movies next week. So we are in at the end of this back into Christmas movies. So let us know what your favorite holiday movies are. What's on your like must watch holiday movies.
I might be watching it for the first time.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Nat is like not a
I sent
not a Christmas
Katie.
person.
I sent Katie a thing on social media saying that I'm in my Grinch era.
Nat's in the
I
Grinch
side
era.
with the Grinch. Like, come on.
So yeah,
You don't have to socialize.
Let us know what holiday movies are on your list so that we can work our way through. And we have a brand new website, so you can go to the VHSclubpod.com and you can get in touch with us, leave your favorite movies, leave a voicemail, which could be really fun for us to do that. Let us know. But without too much further ado, we don't have a ton of people in the live studio audience tonight because this is a 6-hour.
Hi, Kimberly, for showing up late.
Hey,
love that you showed up anyways.
So we have a huge shout out to Paul, Dane, George, Hank, and Kimberly, who are all troopers. Even though this was a hey friends, let's watch a 6-hour miniseries together. And they were like, we'll be back next week when holiday movies return. So
really, Katie and I just needed to swoon.
Yeah,
over Colin Firth.
This is the Thanksgiving palate cleanser because we were off last week for Thanksgiving because we record typically live on Thursdays, and so so Thursday was Thanksgiving in the United States, so we were off last week. So it felt appropriate to do 6 hours, but then of course I left it until the last minute and just watched all
last minute.
As quickly as I could, but worth it. Worth it. Paul doesn't remember enough potato in this movie to be able to relate. There wasn't a lot of potato in this movie. You're right. Well, here you go, Paul. So without further ado, hang on, let me close this. This is how many potatoes we gave. Let's count together. Ready? All of them. Every single potato. Let's see here. We gotta go this way. Nope, this way. I gotta go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21. 21 potatoes. Nat can also fast math if you want to, but I think there's 20.
I'm not. Katie asked me to math.
21 potatoes. I mean, divided by 6, that's some fast math for you, because technically 6 VHSs and a lot of potatoes. Really just a great experience if you're looking to feel romantic. This is your moment. I encourage you to watch this one and check it out.
In my mind, the potatoes have been rinsed. They're a little wet. They're wet potatoes.
Yeah, the potatoes may have jumped/fallen into a pond and now we're just looking really cute.
Shout out to Colin Firth for
for just owning it. Colin Firth just Darcy.
You know what? I'm gonna be blunt. Thank you, Colin Firth, for making panties wet for many a decade and for many a decade to come, because that's it. Yeah.
That's the vibe. That's the vibe with this one. Well, I am excited to dive into a holiday Christmas season.
Yes.
I
lied. I just lied to you guys. That yes was a full lie. So excited. Yeah, it tapered off at the end because I'm like, I'm lying to you. I just said yes because that was the right response.
Well,
not
I was
the
gonna
truth.
say we should do 2 a week so that we can get as many in as possible. But that might be Nat's worst experience. So
I mean, we can. Okay. You know what? I do like some Christmas movies. I do.
So what is your favorite Christmas movie?
Die Hard.
Well, okay.
But we're saving that for the end of the month.
That one we're going to do.
Excluding that, I do love the Grinch. Mm-hmm. Not the live action one,
OG cartoon Grinch.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do love with the Red Ryder BB gun, A Christmas Story.
Christmas Story is solid.
Also a good book. Mm-hmm. And I do like Christmas Vacation. Yeah.
I feel like we might have to start with Christmas Vacation.
We could start with Christmas Vacation.
All right.
We will pretend that what's his face? I was going to say Chuck Norris, not Chevy Chase. Chuck Norris. Chevy
Chase in my mind is
he's a terrible human being. We know
the two. Yeah, I've separated out the two.
He used to be very funny.
Yeah,
he's very funny in this movie.
Yeah, he's very funny. This was
my God, Quaid, the not good looking Quaid is in this movie, and he's also crazy.
He's great in the movie, though. So
he tried to escape America to come to Canada, and we're like, no. You do not pass this border. You're going to be arrested for a lot of shit in the States. Here, you take him.
Okay, so maybe we just will not do a lot of research into any of the actors.
No, let's just
of this
enjoy
movie.
the movie.
We're just going to enjoy
really
the
funny.
movie. No movie facts for next week other than
yeah.
the enjoyment.
Because if we look at facts for that movie, it's just gonna get real dark real fast.
Yeah, it's gonna get real dark real fast. All right, well, Tater Tots you'll have to let us know what your favorite movies are, so we make because limited time because we have to do Die Hard. Although I am cool with doing Die Hard. So Die Hard definitely is a Christmas movie, and B, we are 100% doing it this year. This podcast was supposed to start with Die Hard, so we're doing it. But Nat and I have traditionally watched it both at Christmas Eve as well as on New Year's Eve. So I'm actually okay if it falls outside of like now till Christmas Day, but is still within the month of December. So just saying, like, we could end like Christmas season. It could be like even like a New Year's Eve or New Year's like time as well. So just
I do generally
I'm up for either way.
Since 2019, we've been watching Die Hard on Christmas Eve.
It's true. It has been a Christmas.
Katie and I have perfected, fun fact, watching movies on Zoom together. Mm-hmm. So we're watching movies separately. We're on Zoom together. And I should need to put this on my CV, on my resume, that I can sync up the sound perfectly.
Yeah, I can't.
It's some sort of hidden talent. Yeah, I'm like, Katie, just turn your volume up and and we're good. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
So there's no feedback.
Yeah. So
it's a talent.
All right. Well, Die Hard's on the list, and I know Kathy was on a couple weeks ago, and that was like one of her favorite Christmas movies. So we're in on that one. Paul, you'll have to let us know what your favorite Christmas/holiday movie
Hank
is.
and George, let us know.
Val is leaving on town she's gonna head out of town for a gig tomorrow. So safe trip to Val, and hope that the show is fantastic. Let us know your favorite Christmas movie while you're thinking about it on the way. And I stupidly in Katie fashion booked show tickets.
Too much.
Yeah, for Thursday. So we might just do 2 episodes next week, but not on Thursday. So we'll see new updated schedule to come. But we have a website now, so you can sign up for email reminders for when I screw things up with the schedule that I planned and then screw up on a regular basis. So
I am also working on posting my stream of consciousness, my Joycean watching notes for the movies that we cover. If you tuck into the P&P notes, get ready for some colorful language. It fits the time. Yeah. And sometimes I'm actually thinking I do put translations. So I'll like write something in like, I guess more UK English and then Americanize it. So like I sometimes put in parentheses. And sometimes I just use foul language that's not acceptable at this side of the pond. But when you travel, it gets added to your vocabulary.
Yeah, it's fine. This is a UK miniseries. So that's fine.
Yeah.
I feel like that's fine. Yeah. Well, this was fun. Thank you for hanging out, Tater Tots, in the live studio audience. If you want to catch us in the live studio audience, you can always join us most Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Not next week, though. That won't work out for you. But most Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. You can always watch or listen wherever you get podcasts. And you can find us at the VHSClubPod.com. Let us know what you think about the new site. Leave us a review. Let us know your favorite movies. We have voicemail now. I'm really excited about it. I tested it. It works. So voicemail. It
does.
Oh, George is coming in here quick at the end saying, we got a couple of movie recommendations here. All right, so Joyeux Noël. I haven't heard that one. 2005. Yes. I'm willing to check that out. That's within range, George. Good. Yeah. 2005. All right.
I do like Christmas movies.
That is an antique. Val Likes a Wonderful Life. That one makes me cry, but I might be up for doing it.
Cry so hard. Ugly cry. I used to watch it every year with my aunt, and then she's like, I can't watch this ever again. I hate this movie. Because, I mean, it plays every Christmas, right? Do things still play on TV? Is TV still real?
I don't know. Is TV still real? It isn't.
I don't know.
But yeah,
but yes, that is a classic. It is so good. so good.
I think Paul's slightly making fun of Val, but I'm just going to roll with it anyway and say that it is a classic. And whether or not that's Val's favorite movie, I'm on board.
She's not as antique as any of us in this crowd because we all are like, that's We watch that every Christmas.
Also, anything for Val, so I will have to add it to the list.
And guys, I stole my niece's pink bunny. It's quite belated from the Die Hard, but here's our little
Con
pink
Air.
bunny
We're
that was
gonna clip it in.
Con Air Die Hard.
Die Hard. Bruce didn't do that.
90s action movie, okay? Well, 80s, 90s action movies.
Yeah.
Anyways, so now I have a pink bunny.
You should give that back to her, but we have a clip of it now. We can
eventually, yeah.
Well, from all of us here, from Nat and I, in the world of We Stayed Up Too Late, we thank you for hanging out with us tonight, and we will see you again next week. Bye, everyone.